Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mad Profit Podcast. Very excited about the guest that we have on today. I interviewed Carolina Gutierrez from Go-To Girl Admin, and this was a very fun interview to do. Carolina has a very different background. She started after she graduated in a very unique field. I don't want to give it away. I want you to hear directly from her. And then the economy changed and her industry changed, and she had to pivot and find a new role for herself. And that's where she started Go-To Girl Admin, which is a virtual assistant slash administrative assistant company that helps small entrepreneurs get things done. And it was just a really wonderful conversation to have. She's got a lot of insight about what she thinks entrepreneurs should get off their plates and what they should do. And a couple of recommendations and tips as well for all of us. So hope you like the interview. Let's dive right in and let's get this going. Thanks.
Welcome to the Mad Profit Podcast, where we interview active investors, entrepreneurs, and experts who left corporate jobs to buy or start successful ventures and live life on their own terms. Listen to their stories, learn from their experiences, and heed their advice so you too can create mad profits and the life you've always wanted. And now, here's your host, Laurent Truc.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I have a special guest, Carolina Gutierrez from Go-To Girl Admin. Carolina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have a conversation with you today. You've done so much. You work with so many different varied types of people. So I can't wait to get into it and to hear some of your experiences and what you've done.
It surprises me when people tell me that they're excited to talk about admin, but okay.
Well, the admin's a part of all of our lives, and so
for sure.
the more we can solve it, the better it is, right? Very good. So instead of me going off and trying to explain who you are, I'd love to hear it directly from you. Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you do?
Sure. So my current venture is called Go-To Girl Admin. Administrative Solutions. It has been around since 2012, but it is not my first business. My background, education-wise, is in insurance and social work, but I started my first business when I was 12 years old, and I didn't realize that happened until recently, and really have had the entrepreneurial spirit running through me pretty much my whole life. And here I am today. What else? I have lots of different hobbies. So sorry, go ahead.
Let's start from the beginning. So I love hearing entrepreneurs. I talk to a lot of professionals that are looking to jump into the entrepreneurial realm. And some of them, and I think this is where you're going, don't even realize that previously they may have had a toe dipped into entrepreneurship. And then like, oh, that's right. When I was 8, I did this. So it sounds like you had a story like that. I'd love to hear it.
I have a couple, actually. So my first business was when I was 12, and I would notice that there was lots of moms standing around after school waiting to pick up their kids. And they lived in the same area that I did. And they were complaining about the cold and stuff. And so there was one that I would see regularly on the elevator. And I offered her once, I'm like, listen, if you ever need, I'd be more than happy to take her back and forth. And she's like, okay, great. And that kind of spread from there. And at one point I had 6 kids. It was this like gaggle of children that I was dragging around. So that was kind of neat. And that developed into more formal babysitting. And then in high school, we had a family friend that worked at a chocolate maker's place, and they got rid of a lot of like chocolate that might have a little dent or stuff like that. Anyways, it was bags and bags that they would give to the employees to get rid of or to take home. And I said, can I have it? And I wasn't a big chocolate eater, but I knew my friends were. And so I became the chocolate pusher of Jarvis Collegiate. And I paid for my prom and my semi-formal and all those little kind of expenditures that you have through funding of, feeding a sugar addiction.
That's brilliant. Free inventory.
Yes, exactly. So, and then the well dried though. So I was like, now I have to invest in it, and it wasn't as luxurious that opportunity. So
That's okay. That's more entrepreneurship. You saw an
yeah,
opportunity, took care of it, and then the dynamics changed and you moved on.
yeah, for sure.
Very good. So how do you get from a 12-year-old and a high schooler doing these kinds of side businesses to kind of your corporate life, your more mature life? What happened after that? You graduated,
So I
and
absolutely never thought that I would be a business owner. I never thought I had the chutzpah for it, to be honest with you. The uncertainty made my stomach turn. But I was in insurance for almost 7 years. I almost had completed my designation in insurance and with the Insurance Institute of Canada, and I was miserable. I hated every moment of it. I felt like I was working for the devil himself, and that my soul was being drained out of my body on a daily basis. And circumstances happened, the heavens aligned, and the stars were in place, and I found myself without a job. And I had started studying hypnosis for a few months, and I had enough of a package that I didn't have to rush back to work. And I continued that summer studying, and I went to the States to study for a bit, and I took a few different classes, and I'm like, I really love this. Like, my passion just totally came out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try this. And I was in private practice for 8 years. I worked with a local psychologist working with car accident victims.
wow.
And it was beautiful. And I'm a fan to this day. I still have a few clients that I see because it really comes from a place of love and not business, that side. But what that taught me was that I didn't prepare my business properly for the changes that were coming in regards to the legislation for car insurance and the coverages that were carrying the majority of my business. And so when the legislation changed in 2011, I found myself going from 8 to 10 new clients a month to 4 in a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and my business shriveled up like like a raisin, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
So that change in legislation went from full coverage to nothing. Is that what took place?
No, what happened was that you had an initial amount of coverage. I believe it was up to $200,000 that they would cover for any expenses that would rise from a car accident. So that could be physiotherapy, that could be someone cleaning your home, that could be a chiropractor. Usually by the time that they felt that there was something more mental health kicking in and going to see this the psychologist, we were in and around the 3 to 6 month mark.
Okay.
So there was still money in that $200,000 pool that everyone pays into. Well, the new legislation kicked in, and that $200,000 went to $30,000. And I can tell you, $30,000 in massage and chiropractors goes like this.
Sure.
So by the time that they qualified to see me, they had to deem it catastrophic. Like, there was just a lot of layers, and it just completely changed. Supposedly it was supposed to drop our car insurance. I have yet to see that happen in our, but the coverages definitely were affected.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting career path that you took. I don't think I know anybody else that's in that field.
And honestly, I would say that it is a life skill to this day. It is a tool that I have yet to find a situation where it doesn't come in handy. So there's, as you can tell, there's still a lot of passion and love there for that. But what it taught me was I never wanted to be in a situation again where I was ill prepared being a business owner. And so I decided that I would go back to get my master's in social work so that I could combine psychotherapy and counseling and my hypnosis practice. And while I was in school, I needed a part-time job. And I didn't want to work at Starbucks, and I didn't want to work at Old Navy, being almost 30. So I said, what am I going to do, right? And I had always been really technical. So computers, technology, software, effortless for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay. And a lot of people in the network that I had built during my hypnosis practice, not so technical. And they would always come to me for questions like, how are you doing this? Or can you help me with this? My printer's not working, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I'll make this a little bit of a side hustle while I'm in school.
Yeah.
And it grew from there. So it started in 2012. My first client, I still talk to my first client. I found her on Craigslist. She was looking for someone to help kind of organize her and get things in order at her home office. And I'm like, okay, fine. Whatever at this point, you're very, and so it continued. I fell out of love with my program. It was challenging because I had a lot of years of clinical experience under my belt, but my classmates didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of difficult because the teacher would be like, so what do you think, Carolina? And you could feel the eyes on you, like, and I'm like, ugh. And I'm like, I'm always going to be looking back at a success instead of looking forward to build new stuff. So I said, maybe this isn't where I want to go.
Okay.
But the business had continued to grow. And yeah, that's where I am here today.
Fantastic. So from that first client, which was setting up an office, doing a little bit of IT work versus the suite that you offer today, how has that changed over time?
Night and day.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't recognize it at all. I tell when I get new business owners that are either referred to me or that approach me about getting some help or some suggestions, because I offer free half-hour consultation. Whatever you can pick my brain during that time, I will give it to you. I firmly believe in information is to be shared and not hoarded. So there's many people that were going to hire me, and in that consultation, I've solved their problems. And I might not get their business right away, but I get it eventually down the line. So I get a lot of new business owners that come in and they're like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And I'm like, what you think you're doing, I can guarantee you your business isn't going to look like that in a year. Think of it as a living, breathing life form that you are nursing and really nurturing as it grows. And it doesn't stay the same. Sometimes it takes on a life of its own, and you look back a year later and you're like, oh my God, I never would have thought that I'd be here today. And it's really, one, being flexible enough to accept that that's the reality and not being too married. I think it's that the rigidness in our lives, whether it's through entrepreneurship or not, really is what can cause a lot of heartache and pain, right? It's
Sure.
not that flow.
So it's funny, when we first met, that was probably the first thing you said as I was mapping out to you my ideas on where to take this thing. And I think I've repeated that exact comment to my wife 15 times since then. She's like, you're starting this now? I'm like, it's not starting, it's just an evolution. Listen, whatever I think it looks like today, it will look different in the next couple of months.
Are you sharing it with her? Or are you convincing her?
As I convince myself as well. It's a little yes, absolutely. Very interesting, very interesting. So you must see a huge array of different entrepreneurs coming to you. Is it mostly small startups? Is it mostly medium-sized businesses? Is there kind of a niche you're focusing on?
No. So the largest business I've dealt with had 280 employees, and
Wow.
this is an entrepreneur that 2 weeks in,
Mm-hmm.
and everything in between. I have to say that I'm a firm believer that life brings us the lessons that we need when we need them. And if there's one blessing that I see in this business and what I've learned in the businesses that I've been exposed to is really giving me the depth and breadth of understanding business from a different perspective, not so much from a school perspective. Because when I originally went to school the first time around, I did business IT. And so I had a bit of commerce background, but it's a completely different world once you're in the trenches. And it's given me that experience that I look back, and if I were to start my hypnosis business again, radically different, because I started from a business foundation as much as I have a passion and caring for those people. So it's been really, really interesting just getting a peek.
Mm-hmm.
When you do the admin, you really get a peek at I would say almost the heart of the business, because an entrepreneur, at least the ones I've come into contact with, aren't people that really want to separate themselves from the business. Not these kind of serial entrepreneurs that have like 8-10 businesses that are good at just managing it and hiring people. No, the ones I've worked with have been very owner driven.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's really given me a peek at mindset, priorities, maybe not even business fundamentals, but attitude. I think attitude plays such a big role in your success, right?
Do you find a lot of these entrepreneurs have a hard time letting go, especially to an admin that they don't necessarily know if they've been that in control of everything?
I laugh and I say people, because I have people in my network I've worked with, and they're like, they need you, or they need someone on your team. And I said, listen, people only come to me under 2 conditions. 1, they've lost money, or 2, they've lost a relationship. And really the relationship equates to money at the end of the day, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Or it could be a family or marriage type of situation where they're kind of like, we never see you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only times, I would say 98% of the time, that's when people will reach out to me. They don't come willing.
Got it. So I like to ask entrepreneurs, I mean, you're in a bit of a different group than some of the ones I've talked to before, because you've eased into this, right? You were doing this part-time while you were kind of finishing up your schooling, and then it just...
I absolutely didn't ease into it. I jumped
Okay.
I had a dream, and I'm like,
I'm doing this.
And everyone thought I was nuts. And
so how did you go from I've got a concept, and I assume you did a little bit of research, but maybe not even, to I got to get money in the door? Like, what did that first 6 months look like? Where did you focus on? Was it marketing?
in which business? My first one?
Sorry, this one specifically, the Go-To Girl.
It was a unique set of circumstances for me. So I had started the business. We were still living in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And some life circumstances changed, and we became what I call economic refugees. We couldn't afford to live buy a house in Toronto.
Mm.
And my partner wanted to buy a home, and I wanted one too. And so we went a little bit further out than the GTA. And it was an economically depressed area, right? There were no jobs.
Wow.
He had a job. I didn't have a job. I had this. And so I really, really had to hustle. I had to find really creative ways. I was driving into Toronto to find clients.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was a very different mentality where we were living. Not to speak badly about it at all. It's just there's something that I call forced entrepreneurship, and that to me is a very sad state, because right now entrepreneurship is the it thing. People are like, it's cool, everyone should do it, but most people are not made for the stress that entrepreneurship brings. And those that are forced into it approach it from a standpoint not of excitement and of getting up and using that queasiness in your belly that I haven't brought any money in to drive you. Instead, they will run the business from a very fear centered place. So there's not investing in the business. There's not proper marketing. It's just getting by. It's paying my mortgage, making sure that I can eat, type of thing. And so I quickly identified that those were not the entrepreneurs that I wanted to work with. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but it didn't fit. They didn't resonate with my own energy. And I really wanted it to be a good fit. And luckily, my partner is a rock in my life and has been very supportive. And he's like, I don't want you to settle.
That's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, I would come home and I'd be like, oh my God, I have this opportunity, but I think they're going to be a nightmare. And he goes, run.
Yeah.
I'd rather you work at Tim Hortons than have to deal with something like that. So that's been very good. That was not the situation the first time around of entrepreneurship for me. So, there's a lot of pieces of the entrepreneur pie that you gotta you gotta work on, or not work on, but realize that.
Figure out, yeah.
Way, yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you would do differently from the way you started this business, especially in those first few months? And I'm coming from the space that there are people out there who are thinking of starting their own business. And so as I do these interviews, there's always pieces of information that come out around how to have well planned so you're on the right foot when you leave your corporate gig, what the first few months look like. And usually a lot of times we learn more from our mistakes than we do from things that go well. So anything looking back that you're like, that was a misstep, would have been nice to do it very differently?
I think for sure, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I would say a business plan for sure.
Really? Okay.
It's like a one-page point form, nothing that you're going to submit to a bank for funding, but just to kind of keep your eye on it, because it really will steer your decisions. That fundamental of your mission, vision, values. I never realized how important that was until I would say, how far in was I? Almost 2 years in before I did that for this business. And it is really where I feel the turning point was. I took a business that at the time, not now, but at the time in 2012, was only for online businesses. So virtual assistant, online business management. It was something that if you had an online store, if you did online trading, anything that lived online, you knew, and it was easy to find someone. And when I saw that, I said, okay, this is saturated. There's a lot of VAs. There's a lot of people in this space. How am I going to differentiate myself? And I saw that there was a gap in the brick and mortar space. So I took that model and I brought it into the brick and mortar space. The problem is that I was pioneering, really.
Yeah.
So pioneering is hard. It's hard. And I know you know what I'm talking about here.
Yes, absolutely.
I would say for the first 2 years, 80% of my time was educating, was just telling people it is possible. This is how it's possible. These are tools that we could use. And my close time back then was probably 6 to 8 months. Imagine 6 to 8 months for one client. And it was because it was coffee after coffee after coffee, explaining and talking about possibilities and reassuring them and calming their doubts and all that. My close time now is under 30 days. But
big difference.
It's a huge difference, right? And really it's that Sandler sales training motto, get to the no as quickly as you can type of thing.
Yeah.
So you're not wasting your time.
And the pushback was, why don't I just hire a temp, or why don't I just do it myself? Is that kind of the number one?
It is, what if there's a problem? How are you going to know? I have paper items. How are we going to get that to you? Also, this like my business evolution coincided with a technology evolution that's been happening, I'd say, for the last 8 years, but really hardcore, maybe 5 or 6. And it is the boom of the custom or the niche out of the box ERP/CRM solutions. And I throw CRM there because sometimes people use CRM when really it's a business management tool. All of a sudden, landscapers have a specific technology, cloud-based technology to help them run their business. All of a sudden, cleaners have it, photographers have it. All these people that were running their business via spreadsheets all of a sudden have this tool that can alleviate 50% of their administrative headache, right? And a good component of my business now is recommending those tools, going in, doing discoveries of this particular business and saying, this is the tool on the market for you, or what I would bring, what other tools I would kind of make a hybrid, or what I call Frankensteining the tools, so that you're able to get the benefit of it without going into an enterprise level system that will break a small business budget.
That's great. So you've taken a risk to your business, a pushback, and you've become the go-to person to consult, saying, well, let me help you implement that.
You know what? Again, it's that adaptability,
Yeah.
right? I think just like in life, but more so in business, and especially business since the Internet of Things. If you aren't flowing with the way technology is flowing, then you're sinking.
Yeah, that's
right?
very true. Yeah.
Because otherwise, those clients are going to turn around, be scratching their head, and their 18-year-old's going to come around and be like, "Let me do a quick Google search," and it's right there, right? And you've become obsolete, right?
For sure. So tell me, you've spoken and seen a lot of different types of business, different entrepreneurs. Do you have recommendations for your general? I mean, we talked about a lot of different things, so there's a lot of good advice along the way. Do you have any kind of big advice that you recommend for budding entrepreneurs?
I have lots of advice. I don't know if it's worth anything, but I'll give it a shot. So
Go for it.
I would say those things that you think that don't take you time, take you a ton of time. One of the first things that I give new clients to do for me before they even get a proposal from me or we do a discovery session is I ask them to do a time log. And just very point form, I don't need anything specific. This is actually more for their benefit than it is for mine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's realizing how you spend your day. So you say 5-minute email. Okay. How many times are you checking that email for 5 minutes? Right. There are tools on that you can run on your computer that will actually tell you spent this amount working, this amount on social media, this amount.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important because I remember when I first started, I was like, oh, I've had a really long day. I've worked really hard, but because I work from home, when I did my log, I had only worked 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
The laundry was done and dishes were cleaned and, all that other stuff, the traps of working at home.
Yeah.
So I'd say definitely take a look at your time. And you don't have to do it forever. When I fall off my time horse, I call it, I'll do that to this day. When I feel that I'm not being productive, I'll do a little time log, even if it's just for 2 or 3 days to see where I'm actually spending the time.
That's fantastic advice. Yesterday, at the end of the day, I was like, wow, that was a long day. And I actually tried to figure out what I got done, and I was embarrassed. Like, I didn't get anything done. And yet I felt like I was constantly working or doing something. So that's a great point.
When you get really good at it, you actually are able to hyper-focus on what you want because you realize, right? And there's a whole bunch of time management techniques that are out there, the Pomodoro technique, things like that, where, working for like 45-minute stints, making sure you take 5-10-minute breaks, things of that nature. I have 2 dogs. My dogs are great because otherwise I could be like a gamer. I could sit in my pajamas all day long obsessing over something and not eat, not sleep, not go to the washroom. But you really aren't productive in those moments, right? You're just physically sitting there, but without those breaks to kind of give yourself the opportunity to kind of, get an energy shift and really take a breath in. You're just spinning your wheels.
Sure. That's great advice.
Yeah. There's one other one. This
Go
is
for it.
Steve. And if there's one recommendation that I can make that every single person can use is a password manager.
Okay. Do you have one that you use specifically?
Yeah, I use LastPass, but there's a lot of ones out there. I believe they still have a free version in LastPass.
Okay.
I use the paid one because I like the mobile experience of it, but I think I paid like $25 a year. Like it's really, but you would be surprised the amount of time that people spend retyping passwords or opening their document, their Excel document named passwords, and then cutting and pasting.
Which they usually have on Google Sheets, which is probably not the most secure place to have.
I believe you only get one opportunity to do like an emergency request. Otherwise, it clears it off. So from a security standpoint, I love it. And from a VA standpoint, you can delegate tasks without handing out over your password.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
And share the access, but they can't physically see what the password is.
Mm-hmm.
So if the relationship ends and you decide to go separate ways, you're not worried that your information is out there being accessed.
Very good. Very good. So let's go into kind of the resources side. Are there resources? This password one's a great example of it. Are there resources that you use on a regular basis that has made you more efficient that you recommend?
That's a whole other show. Like there's so many. I do recommend that whatever it is that you do, you want to look for some type of ERP, mini ERP business management tool. It really makes a difference. Like, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't use one until about the 2-year mark. So again, 2 years for me was a big turning point in the business.
Okay.
And when I actually set it up, and I set it up properly. So you pay someone to set it up, or you take the investment of time. You literally take 3 days, 4 days, up to a week to make sure that you got it going. But as soon as I pressed complete in the setup, I felt like 50 pounds were lifted off of my shoulders, just in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I joke around all the time. I'm like, if there was a software, if one could marry software, I would have been married. Because it was all these thoughts, all this clutter that we carry in our mind. All of a sudden, I had a place to put it in an organized fashion that I could delegate if needed. So yeah, I would say definitely that would be one of the resources that I would wholeheartedly recommend.
Suggest that right off the bat, or is it after, like timing wise?
There's a lot of them that are free.
Okay.
So it's not a bad idea to get started right away on them, because you get into the habit of using them. Everything is right. And trust me, the habit is a lot easier to create when you have 1 or 2 clients than when you have 30. And you have 4 quotes that are needed, and you have, all of these other commitments that come with the juggling of a business.
Great point. Great point.
The other thing that I would recommend that I find is the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is not getting their bookkeeping professionally done. It is the number one place where you can lose money.
Mm-hmm.
You think that you're saving money by doing it yourself, but you're not, because then your accountant has to go in and fix it. And he's fixing it at accounting rates, not bookkeeping rates, which are significantly different. And it's money. Like, really, do you want to mess with how much you're going to tell the taxman that you owe them? Scrimp and save there, and then 2 years down the line, you find out that it was done wrong, and then you owe all this money.
Yeah.
I don't know. That is an area that I'm absolutely risk averse in respect to. So yeah, that's a mistake I see many people make.
It's a great point. And I guess some people really love numbers, and I have an engineering degree, but I cannot stand doing bookkeeping. Like, it just drives me up the wall.
For it. It is tedious work, and I think that bookkeepers are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, very good. Any other books or other types of programs that you've leveraged before that have kind of created the mindset that you have today for business that you would recommend?
I would say for me, spirituality has played a huge role.
Okay.
In regards to, there's a lot of trust that goes in when you run your own business. And if you read any of these kind of entrepreneurial books, or of these self-made men, and I say men because unfortunately those are the majority of the books that we have, but they all speak of really using your intuition and using your internal guidance. So that to me has played a huge role. And it might not make fiscal sense, but if my gut says no, I've learned the hard way to follow my gut. And you know, it might make sense years down the line. It might never make sense. But it's usually right more than it is wrong. And I like those odds.
Yes.
So that's definitely sprinkled throughout how I do business. From a book perspective, and I know I recommended this one to you, but I loved the Profits First system.
Mm-hmm.
That was a game changer for my business. I implemented it almost 4 years ago. And at the time, I was just starting to really grow. And I had a serious concussion. I fell in the ice and I was out for 6 months. And I had started implementing the Profits First system about maybe 4 months beforehand. And that saved my business.
Wow.
Because I was able to have enough money properly allocated that I was able to get through the 6 months where I wasn't really working that much. It gives you a sense of peace that you're taking care of things. I don't know if you want me to go through it. I'm not an expert at it, but it gives you kind of a filter with which to look at the money that comes into your business, how to allocate it, the percentage, where it goes, whether you're spending too much in a certain area or not. And for someone who, I don't have that financial background, that is not something that comes easy for me. I always joke with people that, you know, I can barely add. I know when you owe me money and I know when money's missing from my account, but that flow of statistics and numbers that really somebody in business manipulates often, that's not my strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
And this took that pressure off because it gave me a simple to follow formula that I just input. And and it's been peace since, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was really impressed by it because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they just want to make sure their business is paying for everything it needs to pay for, and they tend to pay themselves last. And I love the way it broke out to pay yourself first and make sure there's an allocation for you. You don't necessarily pull it out all the time, but yeah, and then it forces you to say, oh, I need money. Well, I didn't make enough to pull out, so I gotta actually do something different.
Exactly.
And I was very impressed with the program.
Yeah. And from what I've been privy to in the businesses that I've seen is that is a consistent issue throughout the business. And I recommend that all the time. It's just been a real game changer. And also when you struggle with late payment terms with clients, which is the reality, right? You know, if you're working for a big, where your clients are big corporations, I've had people in the accounts payable department say, we might have 30-day or 60-day terms with a contractor. We will not pick up that invoice till at least 180 days in. What do you do?
Yeah,
right? What do you do as a contractor? So it really kind of gives you a bit of that leverage to not drown in those situations.
Very good. This was fantastic. Any other kind of last minute advice? I'm trying to pull as much out of you as I possibly can. Are you noticing?
Okay. So I think that people suffer from, I wrote a blog about this. I think that entrepreneurs, you have to suffer from these two diseases, but you have to get help for them. Okay? You have to suffer from them in order to be an entrepreneur. But as soon as you become an entrepreneur, you need to get help from them. And the one is the disease of, I think that I can do it better. Because otherwise we wouldn't have the chutzpah to get out and go on our own. And I can do everything. And you cannot.
Yeah. Yes.
You absolutely cannot. And the only thing that contributes is to poor quality of what you're not great at. So that in my department would be bookkeeping. And two, burnout. What's the point of taking this chance if you can't enjoy some of the time that you have?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This was huge. Thank you so much for taking the time. How does somebody get in contact with you if they're interested in your services or that 30-minute
Sure. And if you invite me for coffee, I make it an hour.
Oh, look at that. Yes, I got the hour, just to be clear.
You can reach out to me at girladmin.com. And you can also find me at LinkedIn at Carolina Gutierrez in Toronto. And I'm always up for meeting entrepreneurs. They're my favorite people. So when you offered me this opportunity, my heart jumped. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you for taking it up. I'll put your contact in the show notes as well in case somebody wants to reach out to you. Yeah. Carolina, thank you so much for taking the time. Appreciate it. And I look forward to having you back on the show in a certain period of time. Okay, get the rest of all that information out of your brain. That'd be wonderful.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for everything. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Mad Profit Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, or the listening platform of your choice. Also, check us out at madxcapital.com for more useful information and resources to help you achieve your investing, entrepreneurial, and business goals. See you next week on the Mad Profit Podcast.